Coaches, have you ever caught yourself asking, where are my leaders? Where is leadership coming from? Have you ever had a season where you just felt like nobody was leading from the front on your team? Well, this is episode 53 of the Don't Tell Me, Show Me podcast. We're going to dig into the concept of leadership nurturing. Do you need natural leaders that have got leadership traits and you just uh, empower them, or can you nurture leadership throughout your team? What's the difference? How to go about it? Well, Mark, thanks for joining us as always. We're off the back of our last episode, our 1 year anniversary with John O'Sullivan, who talked a lot about the idea of a captain, how to select that right person, but then also brought it into leadership. This episode is getting really practical, isn't it? Like, how do we nurture leadership? How do you cultivate leadership within a team?
Yes, and let's start with saying you definitely can. Let's also start by saying you may have natural leaders you don't even know about because they are staying in the shadows based on the culture or the hierarchy that they're respecting, and they're just waiting. I've seen this so often when I used to run the basic training. Um, Civilians coming in and you've got them for a period of time, and so many of people could be great leaders naturally, but they just need unlocking. They need certain situations where you can put them, and there's many ways we can discuss how we can do that. But I see it so much that it's replicated in sport where these people that are reading the game so well know what to say. They might start to do it just with a buddy, just whisper in the ear and having a positive influence, but they're politely not stepping up because they don't want to disrespect the captain or the leaders in the hierarchy or who's got the labels on them. So it's understanding how can we really cultivate with what we've got and not just do that flash. Oh yeah, we're relying on this person, they're injured. Oh my God, I've got no leaders in my team now.
Well, this is the kind of dichotomy, isn't it? Like the catch-22 of leadership. Sometimes we look for people with great leadership traits in our teams. We might appoint them to some sort of position, or they naturally acquire it in some sort of hierarchy. But just having that hierarchy then puts somebody at the bottom. And now, how do you get leadership out of that person? It's almost like an inverse relationship. The more leadership, the more I empower some people within my team. By definition, am I disempowering other people to step up?
And that's back to great leadership. Great leadership, if you are seen as the captain, the one thing you want to do is empower everyone around you, not see somebody as a threat. Great leaders do that all the time. So people aren't reliant on them. They're there sometimes in stressful moments or people need direction. They go, guys, we're going to do this. But I think what's really important in teams, whether that's in business and in sport, is to recognize it's not about just what you do on the pitch or the court. Great teams are built in what you do, not in matches, is what you do before you turn up, is what you do when people are walking away, is what you do when it's mid-season and things aren't going well in a practice session. So it's not just about who's got a tactical strategy that they can put in place in that moment. It's not just that one person that everyone's a bit down on the court or on the pitch, right? I can say something to pick them up. So if we had clarity, Simon, on the leadership and what we could talk about leadership now, often leadership's seen as everyone's managing things, whether that's in business or sport, managing their role, what they need to do. And often the leader's seen as a person that climbs the highest tree, looks around and go, everyone, we're going that way. And then it's people still doing the logistic management stuff and they go, okay, I've got direction now. But if we look at it in the context of culture, leadership is about understanding what needs to be done in this moment that's the right choice to make and commitment to it. And I either do that through actions and not waiting for someone to do it, or I do it through actions and words where I influence others to do it. And if we look at leadership as influence, in which John, please go back and listen to that great episode, the previous one, John talks about leadership and influencing is so synced, but anyone can be the person that instigates what needs to happen in this moment, in the environment, in the culture, not just that tactical choice under stress in a match.
Yeah, that's maybe a subtle difference between leaders and leadership. Are you cultivating leaders or are you cultivating leadership? There can be a subtle difference there because in some situations, you may have somebody who's maybe not contributed all that much vocally, but they say the right thing at the right time. It might be halftime of a game that we're losing, or it might be off the back of a really difficult loss. And that person who's been sitting at the back observing can make a small, simple statement that actually unlocks the dynamics of the team. I've been in that situation myself, being a bench player, and you don't in that situation you don't want to rock the boat like you were describing earlier. Sometimes leadership is associated with the quality of your abilities, how good you are. Basically, as a player, you can only be a leader if you're one of the best players. So therefore, if you're not one of the best players, how can you lead?
Well, let's look at, we looked at the takeaways from John's, from mine, the last podcast. What was really clear, and obviously, John, if you haven't no understand about John, one, go back to the podcast. But John's had the privilege to speak to so many of some of the greatest coaches and leaders on the planet, current and previously, in many, many sports at all levels and at university, state level. So he's picking up on what is seen as trends. And one of those elements about being an influencer, whether, leading in the moment, if we now put that into context of, if anyone's got a team, if we start with. So if we looked at something like basketball, rugby, hockey, netball, soccer, football, the leader could be somebody, everyone's turning up and everyone's looking a bit flat. They haven't even got to the coach starting to warm up yet, or the brief. That person now is recognizing it, and they're the person that does a bit of a laugh or pulls everyone and go, come on, guys, we've got this. Or the weather's terrible and people are focused on it's bad weather. And it's that one person that may not be the captain, and often it's not, is to say, guys, we might play in this on Saturday. We should be blessed. We've got this weather today. It's a paradigm shift of mentality. That's an example of someone leading, someone doing an intervention that has a positive shift on actions, thoughts, behaviors. And we can see that all the way through. We could see that even in a timeout, even in practice, when everyone's getting caught up in loads of things. And we got that one person go, guys, remind me what we said success was. Okay, let's review against that. It doesn't need to be the coach, and it's giving people clarity again. It's the same as we spoke about on the last podcast, is people are walking off from practice now and there's bottles left, there's tape that people have taken off. Well, it can be anyone to go, well, I'm going back to pick that up. And someone sees it and goes, hey, guys, let's go back and pick that up. Well, that person that said it and the person that was the action of behavior, they are leading. They are leading by behaviors. They are leading by action. So now if we look at that within our organization, whether we're working with 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds or in a professional team or amateur, if we look at it as like that, as who are our influencers that recognize what needs to be done in the moment, are we cultivating that? If we are cultivating it, what we'll find is the captain or the leader will be giving someone that fist bump, that hand touch, that awesome. Listen to Stevie, Sarah. Thank you, Sarah. Because interdependency, the strength of the team is the effectiveness of everyone within that team, the collective, not the one person that everyone's waiting for them to say something. I think that's the defining difference in practical, real world leading.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, I've been in a situation where I've wanted to share power with players, and I'm working at a community level. So I've got people that are, if I'm coaching an adult team, like really competent people in their professional lives, potentially well educated, or that they're in workplaces, so they know about leadership dynamics in the workplace, might have had some training as well. So I've got generally really competent people. And I've been in a situation where I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to be player centered, I'm going to be athlete led, and I'm going to let the players do all the talking, and I'll call a timeout in the middle of scrimmage and practice and say, right, player timeout, and as two teams are playing scrimmaging against each other. And I'm thinking I'm empowering leadership in my team. And then I've looked across, and one person in that sub team is doing all the talking. And then in the other group, one person's doing all the talking. And I'm just going, I think I've gone from coach led to athlete led, but I haven't really, because I've still got just one person talking. I've just shifted who that one person is from me to a captain style player who actually secretly wants to do all the talking themselves.
Now that's where we need to be really explicit on that paradigm shift of role. And we've talked about it, I think, on some of the earlier episodes, in that point of, if I'm a coach that people come in for a timeout and they're listening to me, and I might ask the odd question, but I'll search for the person that gives me the answer I want, that's going to give me the right answer. Well, that's your modeling right there. So then if we go, right, guys, it's over to you, we're going to get the person going, well, I'm going to be coach, and they'll just be the voice, as
Mm.
opposed to letting them understand. And let's give you an example. Pitch or court, someone's come in and coach goes, right, I need you guys to review. Well, that's not good enough to give them clarity on what success would be. What success would be is, guys, I want you to review, but when you're leading a conversation, what's really important is you seek input from the person of relevance. An example may be, if something's happened in the left wing defense and we're coming in, as opposed to me saying, right, we need to do this, I need to go to Sarah, can you just review your thoughts on what happened over there? Because Sarah was in that position at defense or just stood behind, or maybe the goalie that saw it. So now that person is communicating, because that's a person that we need to understand what they saw, what choices they recognize to impact change. So all of a sudden now we've got a player that may be taking it, but instead of going, right, I need to be doing all the talking, I'm just going, hang on a minute, talk to me what happened over there. What's your thoughts on that? And that's why in many sports, lacrosse is a great example, is often the goalie was silent in timeouts, but actually what we want to say is you're the person that sees the whole
Yeah.
pitch.
Mm.
So actually when they come in, let's get you to go first, because you're seeing everything. Now we can cultivate their awareness, etc. But that's that paradigm shift. If we're not really explicit, back to our lighthouse, what type of team do we want to develop on and off the court or the pitch? If we're not then allowing all the people involved in that to explicitly understand why I don't want you just to lead like you might recognize another coach to lead in a timeout, why I don't want one person be giving all the direction, because you're just being me, a poor me as a coach, telling you what to do. So we got to understand, if you're a person of influence, that you are the voice that everyone looks to, don't be the voice of tell, be the voice to stimulate the thought and the sharing of the people that are relative to the situation. And now there's a bit of a shift. So my role's a bit different than I thought it was. And then cultivate that. We've seen already, Simon, if we see someone nailing that in the timeouts, all of a sudden they're being the traditional coach the player is, we pull them to the side and go, love what you're doing there, set a challenge for you. Next time you go in, we know Steve is a bit silent there in that midfield, and we know it's a midfield challenge for us right now. Can you stand next to him and ask him what he thinks first? Can you do that for me and get those quieter people involved? Because we want to understand what they're seeing.
Mm.
I can do that, coach. So we're not shutting that person down, but we're cultivating them in a way we want them to communicate with others.
Mm. Hey, what are you seeing at the moment around in elite sport? So we've got the World Cup happening in America at the moment. England, for example, their captain is Harry Kane, undoubtedly their best player. My beloved All Blacks just named their first squad of the season earlier today. Ardie Savea appointed captain, undoubtedly the best player. Does the best player have to be appointed as the captain? And what do you see in what are we not seeing? Like with the England team, what are we not seeing off the pitch, do you think, with regard to leadership?
Well, if we look at the England soccer team at the moment for the World Cup, the manager made it very clear he's selecting based on the players that can work best together. He's not selecting necessarily the best individual players, which for me was a breath of fresh air.
Mm.
And I think confused a few of the pundits, because it's about the team connection. What I see in the elite sports side that often isn't seen from the sideline is sometimes there's just a coincidence that the best player is the captain, but that's often because their game management is really good. They have a good rapport and influence with other players in that moment. And also there's a logic of who's going to be on the court or the pitch for the most amount of time.
Yeah.
So I'll link them. But
And
when we
and
look at it,
and who can influence the referee?
yeah, that side. I mean, Stuart Hooper was a great example of that. Rugby union is retired now. He was Bath, and he constantly, overtly continued to nourish his relationship with every single referee.
Mm-hmm.
And he'd only challenge them in a respectful way if he wasn't sure, and he'd just check on the rule and he'd go, thank you. But he built such a credibility that when he saw something that was wrong, he would go to the ref, politely and say, look, just for clarity on the rule, ref, isn't it this? And I remember the Bath Gloucester game, which was always a tough place to come, Gloucester back in the day,
Mm.
to win. And it was the last minute and the clock was just turning over. There was a penalty happening. Bath had to score and they were on the line to score, and the ref did the penalty and then were about to give the ball to Gloucester. And Stuart went to the ref, said, just clarity for this rule, we get possession back. Is that correct? And the ref said, yes, you're correct. And then gave it to Bath. Bath ended up winning the game. So yes, there is that element to it. But I think what's really important is understanding what you don't see is all the people that have the elements outside of what you see on the label of captain, their role in the defence or the mid-court, their role in helping the younger players come through in their game management. And all of that is happening through practices. So it's never on that one person. Often the captain is the person that has been labelled because that's a person will have the interview after the match.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen it to that point because we have, it's naturally, we don't need this person, we're naturally, but everyone's asking for, we need a captain. So we'll name you because you're great in front of the camera. You're also one of our natural leaders within the team.
Mm. Mm. I've had seasons where I thought if I could get away with not appointing a captain this season, I will. I've had other seasons where it's obvious. This last season, my coach, for example, there's just a really obvious and clear leader in the group, so it was it was a no-brainer. Decision made itself. I've had other seasons where I've reluctant. I've basically not named a captain. On the score sheet or the team sheet for the day of the game, you've got to name a captain. So I sort of put a C in brackets next to somebody's name, but not necessarily make a big deal of it, because I've just found it can backfire. You can make a rod for your own back there unnecessarily, especially if you don't have full alignment with that person, or if they're not fully respected within the group, they might just be the most vocal.
Well, we're back to that point of if we're cultivating leadership, we need to cultivate within everybody. So I use that framework called the rule of three, which is that, and it's the principle of if we strip it back in everyone in any position, it's the principle of identifying the right choice in the moment, and it's not just identifying the choice and the execution of that choice. It's identifying the right choice, the level of commitment to the choice, and then the execution of that choice. And their three are so important. Now, that could be the person going to pick that tape up. That person going, right now, I need to pull everyone back. Right now, I need to, coach, can we reset this warm-up? Because we're not sprinting past the line. This is not us. I'm making a choice. That's a verbal choice. Or I could be the one whispering something there. Or I could be the one, right, I need to lead here now. I'm going to sprint back for that ball we've just lost and go, come on, guys, we've got this. But that's the principle. So one is at self. What am I doing at self? What is the right thing to do now? And this is where we need clarity in purpose and expectations of permissions. And if it's the right thing to do, I'm going to have the courage to do it until I don't need the courage to do it, because I know when I do the right thing, I'm supported by my peers and my coach, even if it doesn't come off, but I'm going to commit to it. And that's at self, everything we do at self. Then two is, I'm recognizing now I'm doing that at self, but two is, what is the right thing? I see someone struggling in software and state. I see someone struggling in making the right choice or their execution of it or their commitment to it. How can I have an effective choice of impact? What am I going to do right now? And then I go for it. So all of those people are leading on choice and decision. That's the right element. And then we have the three, which as a coach should be doing the same. What is the right thing to do now? What was the right choice? Right, I'm going to commit to that choice. A step back. How effective was that choice? How effective was my execution to that choice? So now when we have captains, and I've been in teams where I've strongly suggested we don't have a captain because there isn't somebody that is good enough for captain. And if you put that person as captain, it's going to hinder their performance with the level of pressure and expectation. And I've seen some teams that have gone with it, and some teams are going, no, we need a captain. And I've asked the players, right, who should be captain, and they've just gone, this person, it's not the right person. And then midway through the season, they're negatively spiraling within their own self-performance. But now in the moments where they need to say something, they're avoiding it because they don't have a good relationship with that player, so they're avoiding the conversation. And now it's a negative process. But if we get back to if we're cultivating where everyone's has accountability and everyone has responsibility in roles on and off the pitch, before, after, during, and we cultivate that 1 and 2, then it makes it so much easier for a captain, for a leadership team to have an effective team, because not everyone's looking to them. What do we do now? Same as a coach on the sideline. Players are looking, what do I do now? In our heads, we're going, well, you should know what you're doing now. Why are you waiting for me? But then they do it, and then you get annoyed because you go, no, you should do that. And then they're going, well, I just won't make a decision then.
Yeah.
I'm back to tell me what to do, coach. So the cultivation of our own behaviors. Remember, John's first chapter was about self-awareness.
Yeah.
So, we're back to, we've spoken about it so many times, haven't we? How self-aware am I as a coach, as an athlete, in what I do and how I do it? How many times am I avoiding things that I know is the right decision? How many times am I committing to it, but I'm quite passive? I know I need to say something to Sarah. I'll kind of whisper it, and there's been no reaction. I won't say it again. You've made a choice, but you're not committing to the choice. So we can't review the execution because there's no commitment. So we're back to that principle again, breaking down of interdependency. You can cultivate it. Now, here's the important point, Simon. If we cultivate that type of communication from the team, the accountability, the quantifying, qualifying the choice are made using the action review process we spoke about before, we will start to spot two things. People are more confident sharing and communicating what they see in the choice they either should have made or we should make, without having a leadership cap on, without having a captain's head on. You'll find then some people will be better than others. Some people, they might feel, you're really good at reading the game in this situation, and the suggestions and choices you're making are really good for the team. Well, naturally, they're the people that go, actually, now we're moving into this game, I want you to lead the defense. I want you to lead the midfield on this. Absolutely. As opposed to, you want me to do that? Okay, well, you've been doing it anyway. I'm just putting a label on it now so everyone knows. Listen to Stevie, listen to Julie. Great. Yeah, I can do that now. So that's leadership cultivation right there, based on clarity on purpose, permissions, rule of 3, using the action review process to slowly but surely get people qualifying and quantifying the choice, the commitment, the executions they're making. Now we're building it into that committing to the right choice.
Yeah. Yeah. So thinking about nature versus nurture, people do arrive with characteristics, with traits, with strengths. So they get to your team with those things or already in place. That might, let's call that nature for lack of a better way of describing it. But nurture isn't just about talking to individuals and building them up or having one-to-ones. It's about, I think, putting those systems and culture in place where leadership can occur. It's that idea of just setting the conditions in which a certain type of behavior can occur, and then allowing it to occur and just nurturing it as you go along. Like something that springs to mind as a real practical thing, you mentioned conversations earlier on, your 3A's framework, if that's used throughout a team, then when somebody leads, there's a culture of responding in a certain way, so that athlete can lead or say something knowing that the 3A's are in place, and therefore have more confidence in people's response, and perhaps feel less threatened by the potential for their ideas to be rejected.
And that's a great example of part of a system robustness to provide. Everyone talks about communication, but often they just talk about the going out bit.
Yeah.
What they don't talk about is how you respond. So that 3A's, for people that haven't heard it, is I'm hearing something coming at me, whether I like it or not, how it's being said, they're saying it, and actually it's solution based, not venting based. I'm internally accepting it. I'm acknowledging it through physical action of a thumb up or words, and then I'm acting on it. I'm committing to that process. So what we're seeing now is we're setting a framework of, look, if we want leadership and we want to cultivate it from anywhere, everywhere, that rule of 2 aspect is, it's no good just saying, right, share what you're seeing, share the change, celebrate the elements. If we haven't shared a principle, if you're hearing that, you need to respond in an effective manner that's aligned to the type team we want to be, where the 3A's comes in. So you haven't got that. You just people either ignoring it deliberately, or retaliating in some sort of negative way. So we're shutting down then the very behaviors we're attempting to cultivate within the team that allows us under pressure to be really, really effective.
Mm, mm. And the key is that acceptance, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
rolling with it. It's almost improvisation. You know, you always roll with what the last person said, trying to avoid but using and. Even if you do disagree, you could say, I accept that, and we could also think about this other idea as well. That must take
I
quite a bit of
think
time and effort.
if you're new to it, the biggest mistake you make is not being explicit why we're doing it, not spending a session going, right, this session's about getting good at the three A's. So let's seek opportunities. If you just talk about it and then think some sort of magic in human response is going to
Mm,
change,
mm,
you're setting yourself up for failure. So you can get to it quite quick in practice. And then as we talked before, I've got that learn it, perform it, challenge it phase, and then the matches. We understand that you'll get it quite quick in learn it phase, you'll get it quite quick in perform it phase. But if when you go to challenge it phase, which is now game situations where you're attempting to catch them out, if you then don't scan for it in those moments because you're caught up in the tech tack, it will shut down quite quick because that's where the pressure,
mm.
that's where the blinkers come on. And that's where you see the true of how people respond when things aren't going well. So it's in those moments when that's where the overt recall comes in. We spoke about a
Yeah.
few episodes ago. That's where I may say, right, we're going into challenge it phase, guys. What I will be looking for is particularly the rule of two and the three A's. So I'm going to challenge, see if I can shut that down, which I've seen you now be really effective on. Your challenge is to not let me shut it down. Then I put them in challenge it phase, and now they're going, right, you're trying to shut this down. We're not going to shut it down. And then we cultivate. So that's an example of overt knowing that, is this going to have an impact on how we perform in matches? Absolutely. Right, let's explicit focus on it. I'm seeing it in performance phase now. I'm going to put you in challenge phase, but I'm going to let you know this is what I'm going to try and shut down. And I'm saying the word try because I'm going to try. You need to turn around and go, I'm not going to let you coach. We're going to keep it alive.
Mm,
And then we
mm.
test it.
Yeah, yeah, this is great. Hey, we're straying into our quick tips here, which is brilliant. Three A's, learn it, perform it, challenge it. So let's just keep rolling with that. What are your other kind of hit me with a practical short idea a coach can use tomorrow to nurture leadership within their team?
So do lots of little one-to-ones. So and I'll give you a spectrum of this. So if you're a volunteer coach, get some parents on board with you, teach them, and go back to our podcast on this is a little action review process, and just say to everyone, right, I'm just going to keep rotating you off and do little 5-10 minute one-to-ones where you pull someone off, go, talk to me. What did you see over there? What options did you identify? What influenced your choice? Did you commit? Great. So next time. And what you're doing then is you're getting players really comfortable, one, speaking to an adult, expressing, but also giving them a framework of reflection. The more you can do that, the more they'll get comfortable on just communicating what they're seeing and what they've done without coach has pulled me across, coach mass coach, so I must have done something wrong. So now they're realizing you value my opinion. Just by doing that and literally commit to it for the next 2-3 weeks, saying, right, I'm going to do at least 10 one-to-ones during matches to courtside. And you'll see very, very quickly players get more comfortable with it. And another tip for this is if they come in and they're just looking at you because they're used to going, if I'm silent enough, coach will fill in the gaps. Just go, okay, you got nothing right. I'm going to ask you again, go back out. But you know what I'm going to ask you next time, and just push them back in again. And then a few minutes later, pull them back out and you'll start to get some information from them.
Yeah.
And that may be, remind me what your work on was, right? When I pull you in, I'm only going to ask you on that work on that saw. Or success, remind me what success is. I'm only going to ask you about that next time.
Mm.
So clarity.
Okay. My tip is to try to use some covert recall to assess the level of leadership that you have in your team. Practical example, use player timeouts. So set up a scrimmage, play for 4 or 5 minutes, stop the scrimmage, say you got 45 seconds, split obviously into your two teams, stand back in a triangle so that you can watch both teams and just notice who talks and how many people talk. You need more than one sample, so you've got to have a larger sample size. So then put them back in for 3, 4, 5 minutes, and have another player timeout, and then and just scan for who's talking and how many people are talking, and are there questions being asked? What's the body language and the eye contact like towards the person who's talking? That'll be some covert recall that'll tell you a lot about the practicalities of leadership in your team.
And then you're back bouncing off that, Simon. If you see someone always doing the talking, pull them to the side and say, right, love that you're leading on this. Can I ask you to, if wherever the person of relevance is, the area of relevance, instead of you giving them solutions, can you put a name on them and ask them what they're seeing? Use the action review process, teach them that. And that goes all the way through to the senior performance stuff. We want people to say, look, I'm over here. It's no good me leading this timeout right now because you're the one that's over there. I want to understand without judgment what you were seeing, what you're identifying, what we need to change, what we need to keep. Right, let's share. And then that player last at the end, which is my tip linked into this, is that player first, player last can be used by athletes and for you as coaches. So if I'm one of the leader players on timeout and the coach isn't there, I need to be asking the person, talk to me, what happened over there? What did you see? What did you identify? And then if there's a conversation, the player last must be, right, so what are you going to do? And put a name on it. Stevie, so what are you going to commit to? Sarah, so what have we agreed? I'm listening now. I'm not adding anything, because if that's the person that needs to understand it and do it, it's no good me reminding them. If they can't tell me, it hasn't gone in. Now, if they know I'm going to be asking them, I know it's gone in. So at least there's an understanding. Then we go, right, just go for it, which will link into, I think, in the halftime talk with the England soccer team. One of the things that came across, because they had an uncomfortable first half against a strong team. And it was quite clear that the manager said, look, we are playing our way. Doesn't matter about the scoreline now. We play us. We play England. And that's all I'm asking of you. So we go for it. We trust ourselves and play the way we can play. And then you saw that in the second half. So that's a clarity of realigning purpose to say, look, this is what we're going to do, and go for it. And then when they do that, irrelevant to the scoreline, we're celebrating. Look what happened when we did what we did, when we played our way, when we backed ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, no, that was really noticeable against Croatia for sure. Okay, my final tip, consider who should appoint your captain. Who should decide who the captain or vice captain are? I've had experiences where I've done that whole process myself, particularly in the off season or pre-season. I've basically known who my captain is coming into the team, and I've just basically made the appointment. I've actually done the other end of the spectrum where I've had players vote, particularly in youth teams, like who should be the captain. That has not worked because that's a popularity contest. But merging the two together, I think, is really important, because who is being led here by the captain? Well, it's the other players. What's their experience of being led by that captain? How do they find space to lead as well? So it's not all on the captain, and asking and seeking those views from players, merging it with my own understanding of the coach about our culture and our overall direction as an organization, and wanting somebody to align for that. I think you've got to take both views into account. I think being just the coach who makes the decision on who the leaders are is a mistake, but also going to the other end of the spectrum is also a mistake, and you risk a popularity contest.
Yeah, and I think going on to that is just making sure that if it's a combined, or if you're saying to players, right, I'm making a judgment that I believe you can make the right call, and that's the only time I would give it to them. You would still be explicit. Says, right, your selection criteria is based on these needs. So this person needs to be able to do in these situations. So don't just think about who's going to say the right motivational chat at half time. These are the critical elements. So looking at those now analyze who you feel would be the right captain for our need, because then you're giving them a parameter of reference. And often players go, I haven't even thought about that. Just like Sheila always gets us up, and you're going, yes, but Sheila also makes really poor tactical decisions, and Sheila's late, and Sheila doesn't hold you accountable when you're not nailing it on the warm-up. Sheila's not very good at celebrating when you do things that she thinks you shouldn't do. She'll have a go at you. She doesn't give you a solution. So maybe Sheila's not the right person for the captain. And it's like, oh, okay.
Well, that's a great example of being coach-led and player-centered at the same time. The coach is leading that process and setting the criteria, but then the players have got a big part to play in deciding who to put forward. Right, Mark, we've covered a lot of bases here. This has been a great episode because we got to not only review our conversation last week with John O'Sullivan, but also take it further and get really practical. Before we go, can you just take a quick minute, just introduce or preview who's going to be our guest next week?
Yes, so we have a golf manager or mentor from Edge Golf College. So Neil will be his name because that is his name, not just for the episode. So Neil's going to be really talking about, and it will link through to this, is where Neil's quite unique, and I think a lot of other sports can take a lot from this. Neil's and his team around him, Fiona, their whole goal is there's players that will come that really want to perform, and they're at the amateur level now, good players, and they're with them for a period of time, like a college, and they're cultivating them to allow them to, when they leave, to be ready for the circuit, to be effective, not just when you're playing golf. How do you know, when you go away somewhere, how do you need to understand, right, here's my budget, how do I find the food and cook the food I need to be prepared? How do I get the transport and the logistics and the time? How do I need to analyze my practice and set my pathway? How do I need to build the spider's webs for all my technical captures, psychologists, sponsors? So Neil's job and his team is to prepare people fully unsupervised. So his journey of understanding the light and shade of when I've been a bit too tight and going, look, you need to do this, and now pulling back a little bit too much. And now that balance of how can I get to influence your decision making, your accountability, but be proactive in improving so you don't need us. You're ready to lead. So I think that will be a real good conversation for many.
Yeah, that's great. Neil's in a unique situation. His environment, his context places constraints on the way he coaches if he wants to help those athletes be successful in the future. That's going to be great. Yeah, thanks for that. All right, well, thanks for sticking with us, all our listeners. As always, thumbs up and 5 stars and all of that. We're bringing more and more guests into the podcast. So every second or third episode at the moment, we're bringing in a guest with a range of different perspectives, and Neil will be quite different next week. So really looking forward to that. All right, Mark, thanks again.
Thank you.